Just 1 second. Put it in on the front page.
Martha's just said, I am here.
Oh, okay. And let me just let her in. I'm just busy moving code around. Okay, she must be sitting in the panel.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she's not in yet.
Yeah.
I mean, oh, there she is.
Yeah, Martha Curtis.
Great.
And hello, Martha Curtis.
Hello, I think you can hear me now.
I
Hello,
can
hello.
indeed, but we can't see you.
Can't see you, yeah.
Yeah, just click on the camera icon in the.
There we go. Am I here?
Your name is and your voice is.
Yeah, you gotta click.
Wait a minute. Here we go.
Yeah, there you go. How are you
There.
doing? There she
There you
is.
go.
You made it.
Here.
Yeah.
You know Roxanne, and I'm John Bennett.
Hello.
This is open. Hope we have a lot of feedback from you. And Roxanne is going to, she has seized the day. That's who I met. She's going to essentially run the show and
Oh, okay.
determine, okay, she's like the director. Okay. Okay, here we go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good morning from Miami Beach, home of Neurosurgical TV. This is Dr. John Bennett. We have a good show today with a very interesting story to all people, not just epileptics. Guy Stoker. He's from, I don't think he's from France, not with that English accent. He's currently in France, and we are joined with Martha Curtis. Can you introduce yourself, please, Martha?
Yes. What would you like to know? I'm Martha Curtis.
Yeah, your musical background.
Okay, yeah. I'm someone who grew up, started seizing at age 3, but my mother introduced me to music and into the world of beauty and order, and then I lived my life in orchestras.
Okay,
Exactly.
very good. We'll hear more. We'll hear more from Martha. Okay, let me introduce Roxanne. I met Roxanne. She likes the technology, and she believes the future of education and epilepsy, which, as everybody knows, it's a big problem. And
Yeah.
it's funny, music brings things to a lot of people. So Guy will do that, and then Roxanne will help us explore that. Okay, Roxanne, it's all yours.
Good morning. Yes, I'm Roxanne Davenport with Seizure Today. And thanks for John Bennett for letting us to come on his channel and I want to introduce Guy Stoker, pianist, composer, singer, and then Martha Curtis, who is more on the classical side.
Right.
And we're going to talk about how music can help with epilepsy and also music around the world. We can reach more people that way with epilepsy to help their families and a lot of people that want to just say, you're not part of us because you're possessed or something like that. We want to teach people so everybody hears music. So thank y'all for joining us.
Mm-hmm.
If you
So,
want to go ahead, Guy,
okay.
and talk, and
Yeah.
then Martha, whenever you want to, you know, speak up.
And do, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
So,
you.
so thank you, Roxanne. So I'm Guy Stoker. I'm a British pianist, composer, and singer-songwriter with epilepsy. My music and my epilepsy journey kind of ran in parallel almost to a large extent. I was able to pick out a tune from a very, very early age. And from the age of 7, I actually started having music lessons. At the age of 11, that was the first time I performed in front of an audience. And interestingly, that was also the age where my seizures kind of came in proper. Now, what made my diagnosis very, very difficult was that over the course of many, many years, I had lots of different types of seizure, which made it very, very difficult to pin down what were the causes of my seizures. So I would have everything from absence seizures to tonic-clonic seizures to a very interesting one, which is called T, as in the drink, which stands for transient epileptic amnesia. And what transient epileptic amnesia is where the patient is fully awake, but also fully aware that they've completely lost their memory. And I was at college the first time I had an episode of T. I'd gone to the library to wait for my dad finishing work because we normally went home together. And all of a sudden, I was aware that I was sitting in this room and I did not have the first clue where I was, how I got there, how long I'd been there, why I was there, what was outside the window, or anything at all. The only thing I knew was that I knew nothing. And I went over to the desk and I instinct or kind of active neuron perhaps told me that there would be something in my wallet which would help the lady identify who this strange man standing in front of her was, and in turn who she should contact. And the next thing I knew, my dad was standing there. And I said, how did you know I was here? And he said, well, the library phoned me. And I was still in a state of confusion. And he took me home and he'd rang my mom, who'd rang the doctor who was waiting there. And the doctor was asking me a whole series of questions. And the only answer I could give was, I don't know. And I said to my mom, I said, I need to go to the bathroom. And she said, okay. And I said, where is it? And the doctor said, do you know anything? And I said, the only thing I know is that this person sat beside me is my mom. I said, other than that, no. And the strange thing about tea is that the following day, you can vividly recollect the complete amnesia. And so that was one of the more interesting ones. But also interestingly for me as a composer and songwriter, even when my epilepsy has been at the absolute depth and basically tearing my life inside out, the one thing that it has never touched is my musical ability. So even though I couldn't get out of the house, for a period of time in 2013, I was literally housebound. And even though that was the case, and even though I had severe issues of depression and anxiety and other such things, the one thing that never disappeared was my musical ability. And actually, probably one of my best pieces of music in relation to living with epilepsy actually came directly after a seizure, because when I had seizures, I used to get really, really bad, what's called post-ictal depression. the kind of why me? How many more times? Why isn't this happening to horrible people? Why should I be the one to endure these horrible experiences kind of thing? And one day when that was my mindset, I went over to the piano and I knew that something special was coming. So I just recorded a piano solo piece called Reflections. And Reflections is extremely raw and true and real. So without playing the whole thing, I'll just accept you can't hear that. Do you know why, John? Because it's set to audio to Zoom, and
Okay.
share screen. That's what it is. I need to share my screen with you. So you should now be able to see what I can see, the grandeur piano.
Okay. We can hear it clear.
And it kind of develops from there. And out of all of the 30 pieces and songs I've written about the experience of epilepsy directly, that's probably one of my personal favorite ones. And I know quite recently, Martha, you actually played that on the violin. And
Dwell on the violin.
it sounds good on the violin. Yeah, I'll bet.
Do you have your violin with you, Martha?
Not out.
Okay,
No.
well, that'll be another show.
Yeah, we'll hopefully hear that at some point. But now where my music and epilepsy route really took hold was in 2008. I did a master's degree in contemporary composition, and I wanted to look at the interrelationships between music and epilepsy. And one of the first interrelationships I came across was actually musicogenic epilepsy, which is whereby music is actually the trigger of the seizure. And most people find that very unusual and very surprising. But when you think about it logically, most things that can have a positive effect can in turn have a negative effect as well. And if you break it down even further, music is simply vibrations. So therefore, by that very definition, vibrations can, of course, affect either positively or negatively the brain function. And in the case of patients with musicogenic seizures, their emotional response to that music manifests as seizure. And it's more common in female patients, and it's also more common in Asian patients. For example, a young Japanese girl only had seizures when she heard Happy Birthday. So hers was quite an easy trigger to pin down. And back in 2010, whilst I was conducting that early research, people were already talking about Martha as a classical violinist who lives with epilepsy. So that's how long your name has already been on the picture, as it were.
Yeah. I'm sure it was a tricky case.
Yeah, yeah. So I wrote a 20-track album called Ictal Variations, which was looking at epilepsy through the world of music, but through multiple genres and multiple compositional techniques. And the reason for doing that is that epilepsy is such a huge, broad subject that if I'd only focused on one musical genre, I would have missed the ball completely. So therefore, I wanted to use many musical genres and compositional techniques to try and look at the world of epilepsy from lots of different perspectives. Not just say, I have epilepsy, this is my experience, but there are 65 million people known to have epilepsy. These are some of the experiences, and these are the ways, some of the ways that we can experience it. And by doing that through music, it opens the door to people who don't understand the terminology of epilepsy or neurology. So if they don't understand words such as neurons or dendrites or other such things, then they might not really understand much about epilepsy at all, or they might think it's only one thing, as in tonic-clonic seizure, when in fact there's over 40 different types.
Well, I just want to say one thing, Guy, before you move on.
Yeah.
Is that music is a really obviously a great message maker. And there's such a more demand for music than there is for epilepsy education. I mean, it's a powerful
Definitely.
bundle that you guys have, I think, Martha and Guy, from a marketing perspective. The audience will be 50,000 times bigger than it would be for epilepsy. Maybe someday we'll reach that number, but right now, the music industry is super on the internet and on YouTube, which is
Yeah.
not your really thing, but I've got to kind of think about that. Martha,
Mm.
you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I was looked at for musicogenic. I went through a bunch of brain surgeries, and so I was looked at a lot. I went through a lot of workup, and someone was very curious about musicogenic epilepsy. But I remember in the first parts of that discussion, Hans Luters looked at me and said, "But Martha, when are you not hearing music?" He saw it as much more general. Because it was true. I was on stage performing in 4 different regional orchestras in 3 different states. And that's because I knew I couldn't, nobody was going to pay full-time, uh, pay for me to have seizures from time to time on stage. But I played all of these regional orchestras because I could hold my own until I seized and I could come back. So
Yeah.
what we would do,
Oh,
I came to next to Malcolm Frager, great pianist in the 80s, in performance of the Beethoven Emperor Concerto, sitting like second stand, so like next to him. But by that time, I'd taught my stand partners to get my violin and my bow out of my hands and onto the floor. I never said epilepsy. I never said seizure. I just said, if my eyes get kind of glassy and I start playing garbage, because things went funny,
Right.
of course. Um, things went a little odd. I'll just get my violin and my bow out of my hands and onto the floor, and I'll be back. And because they were staying from simple to complex partial, and at that point. So, and if I could play straight through like a focal aware seizure, simple partial seizure, it was horrifying because it was right amygdala.
Yeah.
And so it was, I mean, we finally figured out
Mhm.
in that brain workup, but so it started this impending doom that if it went further, it was just real terror. And that's at what point things clicked out. And
Mhm.
my bow and my vote,
Yeah.
I know that, but I know that.
Were you driving at that time, Martha?
No,
No. Okay.
no. I mean,
Sure. That's a no-no. I shouldn't ask that about epileptic, right?
yeah, I did for a while. And then when I was coming to in dark parking lots, didn't know where I was, I realized I was no different than a drunk driver at that point. Because if you're not conscious, it's
And Guy, do you drive?
I do now, yes, because I've been seizure free for 12 to 13 years.
Oh, okay.
I do it now, but yeah.
And you got to bring
Yeah.
documentation to your doctor and everything that
Yeah,
Right.
seizure free.
my doctor provides a confirmation that I have been seizure free for sufficient period of time. But where else it comes in for me is for 14 years, I've worked as a musician on cruise ships. And anybody who wants to work on a cruise ship has to have pass a medical test.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing is different companies have different medical tests that they will require you to take. And if it's what's called a PEME or PEME, which is pre-employment medical examination, their their criteria for epilepsy is that not only are you seizure free for at least 5 years, but that you are also medication free for 5 years,
Oh, wow.
which is
So that adds another snag.
which is
Yeah.
basically just workplace discrimination with a different colored bow,
Yeah.
you
Yikes.
know?
Exactly.
And at the end of the day, what I argue with people is, I mean, I've never won the argument, but what what I always argue with people is, at the end of the day, the captain of the ship is equally as likely to drop down dead from a brain aneurysm or a cardiopulmonary event as I am to have an epileptic seizure, but they give him the job when there's actually equally high a just in case for him as there is for me,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
But they refuse to acknowledge that.
Exactly. And it when you go to get a job, I always told everybody that I had them to make sure, they had it on file or, but I had one person that was a supervisor who didn't know that she couldn't tell another employee that I had them. But instead of writing her up, they wrote me up. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's the same here as it
Yeah,
is, for all these other. And this was the medical field. I worked
yeah,
in the medical field, and she should have known better. But
yeah. I mean,
it's horrible for everything. Yeah.
thankfully for me, there are cruise companies out there who will ask you for a different medical, which only specifies that you must be seizure free for 2.5 years, uh, which is called an ENG1 medical. And thankfully, I am perfectly capable of passing that. And it doesn't say you're not allowed to use medication, because by using medication, that is how I am seizure free.
Excuse me,
Mhm.
that last test, could you please explain that? You said it can diagnose a seizure history?
Well, ENG1 medical um, is
What
for
is that?
people.
What is that?
It's a medical for those who want to work on cruise ships as crew members.
Oh, it's totally
Uh,
separate. It's their
yeah,
test.
yeah.
Okay.
And so therefore, under ENG1 guidelines, if you have been seizure free for 2.5 years, then you pass that criteria. Whereas with PEME or PEMI, if you are taking medication, they don't want you,
Okay.
you know,
It's bizarre.
which, as I say, is the biggest example of workplace discrimination you can ask
Has
for.
it been challenged in court?
No, because maritime law and land law are
Oh,
two
different.
different things.
It's
So
good and bad. It's good and bad to have that law.
they can get away with being massively discriminative,
Yeah.
you know. Um, and discrimination in the
Well,
workplace is
it's
one
good
of
to
the
let,
things.
yeah, I'm sure epileptics are sure of some level of discrimination, right,
Yes.
Roxanne, and many,
Yeah.
And-
That's why I never used the word.
Yeah.
Well, I
yeah.
was gonna say, Martha, I call mine spells.
I don't,
Right.
I didn't call mine anything. I called myself a violinist, walked out, won the audition, sat down, and hoped for the best, of course.
Yeah.
But if I seized, when I found my violin, my bow on the floor, I picked it up and I finished.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
finished
Oh,
that Beethoven piano concerto with
Mm.
Malcolm Frager,
Yeah.
but that was my strong drive, was to be able to get functional as fast, because I knew from a very young age, because mine were these bizarre, this
Yeah.
terror stuff. I really thought I was going to be locked down in a psych ward. One
Yeah.
Cuckoo Bell came out when I
Well, had you been born in a different time period, that's precisely what would have happened to you.
Yeah, and so what I decided was, if I could prove I was functional, like really functional,
Hmm.
um, that wouldn't happen. And
Mm.
I could, that was my whole goal, was to just get functional so I could pick up my violin, and as long as someone could point to where I was, um, my hands. That's the beauty of music training.
Yeah.
You've got all of you've got,
it's imprinted in your brain, huh?
Yeah.
well, yeah, and as a matter of fact, my whole right temporal lobe is gone. So people were pretty scared, as the first professional musician that the Cleveland Clinic had worked up. But with half my, so they put music in the WADA test. So I
Mhm.
music with only
Mm.
my right brain and only my left brain.
Right.
I didn't hear it with my right brain.
Well,
Okay.
this is a question that applies to everyone, not just to you guys, but did you load up on your medication before performing to prevent a
Yes,
seizure? Would you do that kind of stuff?
sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
But what I would do, I mean, Luder just shook his head. But because I was on high doses of Tegretol at that point, and I would see double and my eyes would shake, I would not load up there. I would load the phenobarbital, which I'd been on since I was 3. I could do anything. Uh,
Mm.
but you can't do anything if you're having a grand mal seizure. So I fought through the fall.
Yeah.
It's just, I can play Beethoven on major drug, on
Yeah.
major drugs, phenobarb, and now it's phenobarb and Lamictal, and uh, it's a very, because I could so automatically play.
Yes.
That's the beauty, is that my left brain was really strong. My right brain was shot from that, in that WADA test, and it's fairly clear, that, because I started playing so young and
Hmm.
did it so much, that my hands really did the job for the neuroplasticity of my
Hmm.
brain was very helpful.
So I've just spotted
That's
that Suniti Rampersad has just joined, and she is actually a psychologist, friend of mine. So she has an interest in all of this as well, from a psychology perspective. And so she's we can't see her or hear her at the moment, but I can see her name on the screen there.
Okay, Sonergy, is the name?
Suniti.
Oh, okay. Wait a minute, I'm asking her to come in, but she's not coming in. Hello,
she just
Sonergy.
needs to click on unmute and then the video
The
if
camera,
she can down at the corner. She shouldn't have to use this.
Yeah.
But Martha, it's odd. Mine was on the left side, and I've had part of my left brain removed, the temporal lobe,
Mhm.
and it. I have the partial complex seizures, and whenever I would have the video EEGs,
Yeah.
I have an aura, so I know when I'm going into one, and
Yeah.
push the button, they come in, and asked me to read something. And they said I read it. I said, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
And it's so weird that yours was on the right and mine was on the left. So
Yeah,
epilepsy is just amazing. Well, I don't want to say amazing, but how it can affect people
Mm. Well,
different, but it might not
there's
be
not
on the
many.
same
There's not
area.
many more things more amazing than the human brain. I mean, you know,
Hmm.
uh, but one of the other things that I found when I was doing the research was that there weren't many true experiential representations of epilepsy through music out there. Um, there were quite a few pieces or songs that had epilepsy in the title or the artist name that actually had nothing to do with epilepsy whatsoever. They were simply using that word as a synonym for either chaos or, I'm sure we've got a whole adult audience here, orgasm, um, because the two are connected. If you look symptomatically at the two events, there are a lot of crossovers. But that's a whole different conversation. Um, but Dr. Brian Kip Harheim from Kansas State University actually teamed up with the neurologist Dr. Ivan Osorio to create a musical model of an epileptic seizure. And the reason he did that was so that those who were newly diagnosed could get some kind of handle on what they'd been diagnosed with, what epilepsy was. Because what he said to me was that quite often after somebody hears that word, epilepsy, everything else thereafter just goes straight over their head. So he wanted to create a model whereby people could understand, well, okay, this is what a seizure is. And it takes a piece of famous classical music, which even people who don't follow classical music would identify with.
Well, that's a very interesting point from a medical point of view, because imaging and monitoring of brain waves are getting so much better and better and better, and AI is like putting things on steroids. So any
Yeah.
developments in the reading the waves are gonna get exponentially better. So I
Can,
think
can I share my screen
yeah,
again
go.
so I can
Yes,
let you hear that?
please do.
Um, yeah. So, so the piece was based on that. So it starts in that context exactly as you would expect to hear it. Then through orchestral manipulation, adding parts in, taking parts out, speeding things up, slowing parts down, etc. It just completely descends into total utter musical dysfunction, which
Well,
is of
Guy,
course,
I'm sorry to interrupt,
yeah.
but this is such a stimulating thing for me as a ex-physician, is that can they individualize diagnosis by monitoring? Suppose they put you on a monitor, could they individualize according to your type of epilepsy and say, oh, it's this or oh, it's that, just from the musical patterns of your brain waves? Am
No,
I making
but
sense?
no, they can't. But actually the opposite is now happening. Dr. Michael Trimble, who's based at University College London, he's a neuropsychiatrist and author and speaker. Um, he has teamed up with the composer Nigel Osborne to create a system of treatment whereby what happens is they bring the patient into the video telemetry suite, and they take an EEG of the patient's brainwave activity, and they take a sample of the patient's healthy brainwave activity. And they have created a computer system which will match the patient's healthy brainwave activity to 8 hours of music from all different genres and subgenres, from music from all around the world. So it's not just Apple or Spotify. Then they'll bring the patient back in, and overnight they will play them 8 hours of music, which actually matches their healthy brainwave activity.
Well, that's something to me, that's a big point to me. I mean, the analysis of facts of all these epileptics can be done now due to AI, and they can take. Is there a study? There's a gentleman you said you mentioned was doing work on this, and
Yeah.
I'll get his contact info from you later. That to me, that would be a show. I mean, it's
Yeah, it would.
it's an important possibility for epileptics. Gives a better future.
It does, yeah. And it kind of highlights the fact of just how important a tool music is
It's
in contextualizing and exploring
that needs
the
to be
world of
followed.
epilepsy.
That needs to be followed
It does, definitely.
and pushed and data accumulated, because once you got data, AI can analyze it all
Yeah,
this
that's the
data
thing.
of different people that have a question. Well, my neurologist can't figure out what's going on with me. Well, let's do the brainwave, music
Yeah.
brainwave
Yeah,
on the person.
it would be a brilliant form of potential way of calming the or reducing the either the number of seizures or severity of seizures. Um, and another piece that I did find during that research was is called "When the Spirit Catches You," which is based on the Hmong people's belief that when you have a seizure, it's actually a sign of possession and you fall down. And that was written by Dr. Cynthia Folio, who was a professor of composition at Temple University. And her daughter had quite profound epilepsy and quite aggressive epilepsy. And the piece was nearly 20 minutes long. And I contacted Cynthia and I said, I'm curious to know why a piece of music which represents something that is in general only a few minutes in duration is 20 minutes long. And she said she made a very interesting point, and she said, when you see somebody you love having a seizure and you know that there's nothing you can do about it, she said, time stands still, which is why a two-minute event can feel more like a 20-minute event. And
Mhm.
I thought that was a really, really interesting point to make. And she did such an amazing job of reflecting that artistically as well. It was an orchestral piece, uh, played by I think it was Temple University Orchestra, and amazing.
Well,
And
there's some research going on in other neurological syndromes like ALS and others where people can't speak. Now with reading of the brain, they're able to think something and it'll be documented, and they
yeah,
can repeat it, and they can
mm,
repeat it. Yeah,
mhm,
this is ALS, and the
mhm,
people are asking, they're actually giving commands like, I want coffee, or I want to do this. Just think
yeah,
it, and it's
yeah,
translated.
mhm.
That's
Right.
where, I mean, it's going all kinds of directions. Interesting stuff.
It is. It's brilliant stuff. And I was saying that there weren't many experiential representations of epilepsy through music, but one of the ones that I did find, which I'd like to let you have a listen to, is because it carries an important message, is by the late Jim Armstrong, who was a Canadian singer-songwriter and guitarist who had epilepsy, and he did a lot of work for Epilepsy Toronto, and sadly passed away a few years back with epilepsy-related symptoms.
How
And
old was he?
Suit up.
he was, I think he was, I think he was in his 40s, something like
Oh,
that. It
that's
wasn't.
early. That's early.
That's sad.
Um, and so this track is called Angel in Our Corner, and what Angel in Our Corner talks about is that as people live with epilepsy who have seizures, one day they can be absolutely fine and not need anybody's help or support at all. And the next day, they can need somebody to be there for them to kind of pick them up, dust them off, and start all over again, kind of thing. So he contextualized that as the angel in our corner. We all need an angel in our corner. And I thought that was such a beautiful way of putting it.
Yeah.
So accurate. So I'll just let you hear Angel in Our Corner, which was from his Mudtown album. And I think he was brilliant. I think he said it brilliantly.
An angel in our corner, and we all need a good friend to warn us. Some days I feel so strong, just like a Superman. In love and kryptonite are the only things that can do me in.
That'll wake up the power
Some days I feel
surgeon.
so alone, just like Frankenstein. Then you play your violin, bringing me back to life again. We all need an angel in our corner.
So, I mean, that is
That's
just
great.
such a
That's great.
brilliant song and
Yeah.
absolutely nailed it. We all need an angel in our corner. Some days we can feel absolutely fine, and other days we really need somebody there to pick us back up again.
So even though you're not having seizures, you still feel strange some days.
I mean, the thing that a lot of people don't realize is when you live with epilepsy, you live with epilepsy every single day, whether you have a seizure or you don't.
Right.
You know? Just because you go through a day without having a seizure doesn't mean you don't live with epilepsy, because there's always the possibility that it will happen.
That's the way it is with you, Roxanne?
Yes. I only way that I know I might have one is my dog will not leave my side. He wasn't
Really?
even trained. And that I'm like, okay, when am I gonna have one?
Oh, wow. How are you,
Yeah.
Martha? How are you?
We stopped these babies like 30 years ago. I
Oh.
stopped seizing. And one of the wonderful things was not living with it anymore. I'm like, right out of 3 brain surgery, I was still, it took a while. You don't wake up in the morning and go, done. But when I got convinced that all of that, because I could now perform and memorize in a way that I couldn't with my right temporal lobe still there, because it was just interfering with the good brain. And I didn't know all that till I had that huge brain workup. But I did know that I never knew what was going to actually happened next. I knew that I just had to come back and I had to be back to beauty. I immediately, I never composed anything, certainly that sounded like my seizure, because it was terrifying. And so I lived in and out of gradations of eeriness to terror for 33 years. And I was playing, I was playing Beethoven, I was playing Brahms symphonies, I was playing, I was doing something with overwhelming beauty. And it was Bob Zients who told me, at Stanford, when I spoke and I did my class. I used to all over the country do my story in both words and music. And he was the one who said, "I'm convinced you were modulating your amygdala. You were modulating your brain with the music." And of course, I had a touch point to beauty, sanity, that was all important because it could vibrate me in a beautiful way.
Oh, good, good. We have the arrival of Sonati Rampersad. Can you
Yes, there
introduce?
she is.
Can you introduce her, please, Guy?
Yes, or she can unmute herself.
Unmute.
Yeah. Unmute yourself, Sonati. Unmute.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay,
There you
go ahead. Go ahead.
Good morning.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. There you are.
I'm sorry, I'm having some internet issues at my place right now.
Okay. So introduce yourself to everybody.
Yeah, hi, I'm Suniti Rampersad. I'm from Mauritius. I'm actually a program support officer for primary schools, but my career field, my studies in mostly on clinical psychology. Also, I'm an educator in sexual and reproductive health. So it's mostly about teaching the young adults, the adolescents, about the importance of having a comprehensive sexual education, which is very limited on the island here. And also about the field that I am, psychology. Yes, we talk about much about mental health and all. There is so many concepts going on about the importance of mental health, but still there is still that propaganda and the stigmatization around all the subjects here. So even if we are educated, we have a lot of educated youngsters here. There's the stigmatization is to such a point that we as young adults we find it very difficult to get a job in the field. So we have to look for another job mostly related, and then we have to practice in our field as a second-based job. So professionally, we have a very restrictive number of professional in the field here because it is mostly controlled by the political parties and all that. But now we are starting to have some openings for everyone. Let's hope that's going to be a best system in the future. But we're just trying to do that. Yeah.
And I'm curious, on the island, what is the perception of epilepsy? Is there any real knowledge of epilepsy or support of epilepsy or?
Okay. We do have an organization here in Mauritius that works with children with
What island?
epilepsy.
Excuse me. What island?
Mauritius.
I'm from Mauritius. It's a small island in the Indian Ocean.
Can you show us, please? Okay, I'll yeah.
Look.
Go on Google Maps, please, and can you please show us?
Yeah.
Can you
Okay.
get that, John?
Or I'll get the. Go ahead. You can talk. I'll find it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do have an organization here. It's called the Epilepsy. It's an epilepsy group. They have a school, if I'm not wrong. They have a school that teach the importance, and they do sensitization campaigns around epilepsy. Their government have some some campaigns, they have doctors, they have nurses, they have people in the field. But still, what I'm saying is that we need a more opening in on the international platform to be
Okay,
able
you
to
got
have an
it. This is
exposure.
an international
Okay,
platform.
yeah,
Okay,
Mauritius is
tell me where we're at
around
here.
here
Okay, where are
on
we
the
at?
south.
It's in the
No,
south.
on the south.
Okay.
Lower,
Down further.
no, this is India.
Okay, which part of the south?
It's mostly near Africa and Madagascar.
Over here?
No,
No.
this is India.
Go to Africa.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said
Move over
India.
to Africa.
Okay, okay. That's easy to do. Hold on. Hold on there.
Bridget.
Okay, let me get down. Not Madagascar, right?
Yeah. Do you have
No.
Madagascar here?
Oh,
You
yeah,
see,
yeah.
there's a small dot called Portwis.
Well,
Oh, Mauritius, yes,
Yeah,
I
this
can
is
see it.
Mauritius
Yeah,
here.
we've done
yeah.
webcasts from here. Okay,
No,
where in Madagascar?
No, it's
No.
near
Oh, it's
Madagascar.
to the right,
On
to the right of
right side.
Okay,
Madagascar.
the right, yeah, there's a couple islands up top here, over
Yeah.
here.
No, down.
Down.
Okay. Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Okay,
here.
which one?
Wow.
Yeah, that
Which
one,
one?
yeah.
St.
This
Paul?
is Reunion Island.
Yeah.
On the upper one
Where
is
Port Louis is, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so you're St. Paul, that's where you're from?
I'm from here. I'm from on the north near
Oh.
Gombe.
Oh, okay, but
No, not this one. This is
Other one.
Reunion
No,
Island.
the other one. The
Oh,
other
okay.
island. That one, yes.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
we go. So that's where you have you spend time there?
Yeah.
That's where she's from.
Oh, well, you're from here. Okay.
Yeah.
You're in Mumbai now, right? Okay. Okay. Very good. In the
Well,
city.
reaching
then.
out to somewhere smaller. Thank you. I mean, really. I mean,
It
the
must take a
bigger
long
places
time.
need to know too, but start somewhere small and grow.
Mhm.
It's great.
If you have
Yeah.
internet, you have a worldwide audience.
Yeah,
That's
that's
the
true.
thing, yeah.
Potentially, we just have to put good information like epilepsy education
Mhm.
on that's
Yeah.
freely accessible to
Yeah.
Mhm.
St. Louis. I mean, to the island. I mean, how good is that? And how powerful? You guys will get impressed with this tool. It's a very powerful tool that anyone can use.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, start
Like-
teaching early and, generations will know how to handle epilepsy,
Yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah, it's all archived. Now, our conversation right now is archived so that I'm looking for an AI that reads the content of videos and
Mhm.
that can give me, they do have one that analyzes it.
Hmm.
But that's something for me to worry about. But
Yeah.
anyways, yeah,
And
there's
I
all
mean,
kinds of ideas that come up.
yeah.
To
So-
me, as far as interesting areas to explore, and one definitely is that area with your friend from London about the
Yeah,
music
Michael
and the
Trimble.
that would merit to me, Roxanne, a webcast for you guys to interact.
Yeah.
And to
Yeah.
see where we're at with that promising. To me, it's promising.
Yeah.
It is.
And he
That's
may
amazing.
enlighten us more with that. So
He's
if you
an
want to invite
amazing.
him, I'll invite him.
He's
Whatever.
he's a brilliant man. He's a brilliant speaker, very gracious man, and I've known him since I very first started my research into
Well,
music and epilepsy.
he would be advancing science. When you advance education, you advance science.
Yes, exactly.
And everyone can do it.
Yeah. And also a good friend of mine in California, Dr. Julie Thompson Dobkin, is actually the founder of an organization called Hidden Truths Project, which is epilepsy art foundation. So they show art from people who live with epilepsy from all around the world.
hiddentruths.com.
Hidden Truths Project.
Uh-huh.
Hidden Truths Project, yes.
Oh, .com.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, it's
if you
amazing
just
because I
search-
know an artist
yeah, if you just
who,
search for Hidden Truths Project, and the logo for them is 1 in 26 because, of
okay.
course, the statistic or the
Mhm.
believed statistic at the moment is that 1 in 26 people will be diagnosed with epilepsy. And my album Ictal Variations actually featured in Hidden Truths way back when, round about the time that I composed it. But more recently, or at the moment, the thing that Roxanne interviewed me about just a couple of weeks ago is that I've now written a new album about looking at the realities of epilepsy through songwriting. And that album is called Purple Universe. And
Roxanne
so
likes that.
And
so
yeah,
it's
and you
looking at things.
started a website.
The purple.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh
purple
yes,
motif.
purple.
Yeah, and I'm working. I'm in the process of building a new website, which will be called Purple Chorus, which and certainly Martha, if you'd like to talk to me on that, that would be fantastic. To get your experience and points of view, etc. That would be
That's possible.
yeah.
You know, one thing that I'm sure you guys are familiar with, they do open brain surgery, and
Yes.
they'll have a person with a violin or whatever playing
Yeah.
it, and
Yes.
because they're dissecting, they're taking out tumors. This is real stuff, and they don't want to take out the part that affects their music, and they'll probe
Mhm.
while they're playing their music and to
Yeah.
determine it.
Yeah.
So, you know, things are going on there as far as music in the brain
Yeah,
Amazing, yes.
and other areas.
was a
Yeah.
little scary to be the first one in Cleveland, but all kind of violinists lined up afterward.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, they've done a whole lot of violinists and open brain and all kind of stuff. But
wow.
yeah, when you hear someone like Hans Luter say, "I'm on uncharted waters," it's pretty scary. It was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, it
Yeah,
was
it's getting better.
Definitely new.
Something like that is going to accelerate in development in the
yeah.
next
And
couple of years.
what was so different about me and music is that I used it to not see. I used it to not express.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
used it to get away,
Yeah.
to make sure that I had because I lived at the intersection of these horrifying seizures and extraordinary beauty.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's a great way to put it.
yeah,
The
well, I just
polls,
finished
the
a book.
polls. Yeah.
There's some words in me right now. But yeah, that's where they crossed. And the seizures I hated the most, of course, were the ones that sabotaged me on stage, that sabotaged some great piece. Because you can't finish. And for me, I was kind of a little more basic than you, Guy, with the seizure times, because I
Yeah.
didn't know anything
So
when
you're constantly in fear of having a seizure apart from the stage, like walking around the street and in the daytime.
well, it wasn't the fear of seizure. It was a right amygdala gone bad, and just
okay.
an impending doom would hit where fear hits in a person, and
Yeah.
then spread to this
Mhm.
extraordinary terror, that I was
Yeah.
about to be killed because something was moving off the horizon to come in to kill me. And
Yes.
if it went ton o'clock, if it generalized grandma, something came over my left shoulder to kill me, and that was it.
Yeah.
So if I could come back and finish a Beethoven symphony, I was really glad.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Go on, carry on.
Yeah, no, so it was not, I know you, Guy, you said something about being encouraged to have the epilepsy speak to you, to write from that standpoint. I would never write music from the standpoint of one of my seizures. They were horrifying. I would never put anyone through by composing that sound, you know? So I mean, it wasn't a sound that I got, but I would never want anyone to be that
It was a feeling, the feeling of doom.
But terror.
not just two. I mean, it's doom if you just stay simple partial.
Yeah.
But and I could play through that. But if it spread to this terror and it was actually coming to kill me, the it was not definable, right? Because nobody else could see it. But a force was coming with intent to kill. And
Yes.
so
Wow,
the
that's
neurosurgeon,
serious stuff.
yeah, well, I
Very-
had a second neurosurgeon looked at me and said, Martha, how have you kept your sanity?
Mm.
I wanted to,
Says, I haven't.
Yeah.
well, that's something we don't talk about. But I did it with a hands. You know, that's what I was terrified of from age 7 on. That
Yeah.
book, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, scared me to death as a little kid. And that's certainly what I was afraid of. And so in real life, when I wasn't seizing, I was just hell bent on being really functional.
Yeah.
Excuse me for changing it, but you guys want that movie, did it affect you more than most people, you think, being an epileptic? You said that movie affected you
Oh,
tremendously,
yeah, with that
right?
book, I didn't actually see it. I just heard grown-ups talking. And
Oh,
that's
you never saw the movie, you've never seen it?
I would never go see that movie.
Oh, okay, okay. How about you, Guy? Did you feel ominous when you watched that
I
movie?
did, yes. But the other thing with me was, and it maybe I would actually have audio hallucinations as well.
Good
So
ones?
at the point of aura, when the sensation of pending doom, I would actually hear a woman's voice talking about my death in the
Oh my
past
God,
tense,
Mm.
as
that
if
is
I'd
scary.
already died and missed my own death.
Wow,
Uh,
heavy
Wow.
and
stuff.
I
that,
didn't know that.
yeah,
I
and
didn't.
that was very, very, very frightening. Um, and only once have I had visual hallucinations. Um, and it was a relative who'd passed away. I was at the dining table with my mom and my wife and my mother-in-law and my mom's partner, and I saw this relative walk straight through the wall, straight through the dining room table. I felt him take me by the arm and heard him say, it's your turn now."
Wow, wow.
Yeah. And the next thing I knew, I was in the living room, but apparently what I'd done at that point was actually just got up from the table and walked into the understairs cupboard and just stood there.
Wow.
And my wife was asking me questions, and I just answered yes to everything. And at one point she said, "Do you know there's a jumbo jet in the garden?" And I said, "Yes." You know?
Wow. Well, that's funny, but it's also
Yeah.
scary.
So it was
Mm.
a very bizarre and scary non-convulsive seizure, you know. Um, and as I say, from a composer perspective, one the breadth and diversity of music is the very reason I want to use that as a tool for exploring the equal depth and breadth and diversity of epilepsy, because to me it makes perfect sense, to explore something as complex and diverse as epilepsy with something that is equally complex and diverse as music, you know.
Well,
Would
it's
it,
odd with me because if I hear two certain songs, I start getting my aura.
Mm.
So I have to either turn the channel or leave the room where I don't hear it, so I won't have one. And that's different, but nothing. It's just those two songs
Music is
that have
well, you
done
know,
that to me.
the auras, I'm giving auras a bad name. Is it always bad? The aura is always ominous?
Yeah.
Is it all, or is it euphoric? sometimes.
Not all. It can be euphoric as well in some patients. Yeah.
Dostoevsky wrote, how could anyone want to take this from me? Because he had
Right.
ecstasy. I had terror, he had ecstasy. It's a rogue piece of brain in the limbic system. So
Yeah.
depends on which rogue piece of,
Which you
Exciting.
want to go for.
yeah,
I've never had the terror.
Mm.
So, I mean, to
that's all I
deal with that, but my aura, is just now it's nausea, a
It
different
just seems so many
form of
varieties.
nausea.
There are.
Guy, Martha and Roxanne, it seems like there's so many faces of epilepsy.
Oh, sure.
There are.
Oh, definitely.
There are at least 40 different types of epileptic seizure,
Mm-hmm.
on top of which you've
Well,
got,
let's get music to treat each one.
or
That-
use
yeah.
music to explore and express each one. I mean, there's
I
enough.
hope it works, and I love music. I mean, I hope it has a therapeutic use and finds a place, and we'll do our best to explore it.
Well, actually,
Follow it.
if I may, I just want to share with you
Sure.
one of the songs from the
We have lots of
album.
time. We have lots of time. There's no time limit.
So this one is called Ride the Wave. And what Ride the Wave is about is if somebody is in a loving relationship who has epilepsy, it's the person who they're in the loving relationship with saying to them, yes, you're going through a rough time, but actually I'm not going anywhere. I'm still here. I'm going to support you in as many ways as you possibly need. So it's kind of like a message of support, really, and it's called Ride the Wave. So. You can't see your hand for the storm. You can't find them graces to stay. Remember, this isn't forever. Together we'll ride the wave. Hear all the darkness around you. Silence is all that you crave. Just remember, this isn't forever, my love. Together we'll ride the wave. It seems like you're losing the battle, like the doubts and the demons have won. But be sure that wherever there's nighttime, somewhere else there's always the sun. Words to help you walk. Now that I see you afraid, we measure the storm clouds together. Together we'll ride the wave. Together we'll ride the wave. Together we'll ride the wave.
Oh, excellent, excellent, Guy. You know, do you
Beautiful.
guys feel more creative? I don't know if I'm getting this right. Do you feel more creative after a epilepsy attack, a guy, or do you feel the same?
Yes, sometimes I do. If I'm in a particularly dark place mentally, then it very much does spark my creativity. And some of the best some of the best works I've written have actually come from the deepest and darkest times of my life, you know.
So
I
they were that graphic, you could verbalize it and write down.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes not always with words, sometimes with music alone. But yeah, sometimes the two, quite often with me, the two will come together. I will get a line in that case when you can't see your hand for the storm clouds, and that to me then just started that journey, which kind of came in one shot, you know. Uh, so yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not.
I keep forgetting, Roxanne.
Martha, were you going to say something now?
It was very different for me because I worked very hard to modulate my brain back to okay. I mean, you have no power over it when it's happening, but I fell in love with the fact that consciousness is efficacious. You know, that I could do stuff because I had me back. One of my pet peeves in the world is the self is an illusion, but I'm I've had a I've been coming back and having a self. You know, I did that for 33 years, 3 to 5 times a month. So I knew when I was back, and so I became very aware of the fact that, of course, I had a self. It happens to be, you know, you have to have everything in line. Things have to
Yeah.
be connected well. Um, but then as soon as I mean, because unimpaired consciousness, you know, delivers that power of the self.
Mhm.
And then of course the perception of that power is what a lot of people miss, but it's the perception of that power that gives rise to the will. And
Yeah.
that's where I lived all the time, was being sure that I could have me back.
Yeah.
And I could do that. I mean, if that's why orchestras are so important, because as a section violinist, I
Mhm.
could come and go, and the music would keep going. I
Yeah.
mean, if I was gone for, you know, I could have an aura, you know, the simple partial seizure, and just keep going, but holding on for my life at that point, you know, hoping that it didn't spread, because that's at what point, of course, I couldn't do anything anymore. But I didn't know that. I mean, I argued with anybody who told me that I was not there anymore. But so getting back, you know, getting my violin in my hands was the most important. Somebody pulled me off the stage into the wings once during a rehearsal, and I didn't know that. So, but I couldn't find, you know, they wanted me to rest. There was no way I was going to rest, because I
Mhm.
didn't know if I would just slip away, you know.
Apparently when I
Judy,
was working on the ships, there was one occasion where I actually had a seizure at the piano.
Yeah, isn't that fun?
I knew
All the
nothing
time.
about it. I mean, but I was walking around and people were sort of like, "Are you all right? Do you feel it?" And I'm sort of like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
huh?" And I'm sort of, "Do you feel it?" And I'm sort of, "Why do you ask?" And absolutely
okay, I'm showing in the
no people.
background, a gentleman who's big in the news today, Elon Musk. You know, he's very big on investigating Neuralinks, and this
Yeah,
is the website.
yeah,
So he's successful at whatever he does. He's
mhm,
going to be successful in Neuralink, and he's exploring the same areas that we're talking about, Guy.
yeah,
Essentially, brainwaves, and they're putting implants in the brain,
Yeah.
uh, and I'm sure that's been done with seizures. Correct, Roxanne? Is that
Is-
done?
Well, the one I have is by my vagal nerve. I have a vagal nerve stimulator
Mhm.
with my
Oh, okay.
magnet.
That's
Since I
another
have an
one.
aura, I can just swipe it across. It's like a pacemaker. I could
Yeah.
call it the
Really?
pacemaker for my brain
Mm.
because
Oh,
it's right
okay.
where pacemakers go for your heart.
Oh,
But it goes up beside my vagal nerve to the area that
wow. It's an
causes them
implant.
to.
That's essentially an implant.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
But
But
another
no,
one,
it's not an electrode under
Right.
my scalp, but or
And
inside
it does
on the
improve your
brain,
treat.
but
It improves your.
it goes through the
Does it
side.
work? Does it work pretty good?
Rough, like I've probably gone through what Martha has talked about because I had brain surgery to remove, but they couldn't take everything because it was so deep, the scar tissue. And so that's why they have that new vagal nerve stimulator had it going there. But yeah, I went through a lot of it having surgery and test after test. And
Did it
Yeah.
help? Did it help?
yes, this helps a
Okay.
lot
A lot. Okay.
because I would have 10 to 13 a month
wow.
And
while I
what
was
is
working.
your epilepsy have a particular name? Your variety of epilepsy?
Oh, well, it's partial complex.
Okay.
So,
That's another one I don't know about.
But actually, in terms of
they have a different name for it now.
Focal
Um,
impaired. It's
focal,
impaired seizure.
yeah,
Yeah.
focal
another
seizures.
implant,
So,
Absence seizures, that's a big garbage bag description, right?
yeah,
Things they don't know what type. Oh, it's an absence seizure.
yeah. Another
hmm
implant is that was developed between Newcastle and London is called CANDO, which stands for Controlling Abnormal Neurodeficiencies Using Optics, and
Optics.
it's a tiny little chip which they put at the point of manifestation, so where the seizure actually manifests. And when the electrical surcharge reaches that point, it triggers the chip
What is
to
that
beam
called? Cans?
can
What?
do, can do,
Can do.
CANDO, yeah.
Okay.
And then that chip is triggered to bounce the surcharge back so it can't reach the seizure point. And the beauty of can do is that if post-operative the patient is still having seizures, they can simply go in and remove the chip. Unlike a lobectomy, where they can't replace the part of the brain that they've removed, they're not actually removing anything at all. They're simply inserting this chip to act as a shield against the electrical surcharge, which manifests as seizure. So it's
well,
brilliant.
Okay. I'm getting the can do.
it seems like they could, like mine, be able to increase the magnetism, I guess you would say, to help make it easier for the find area, to keep it from hitting that spot. I
Yeah.
wonder if the chip would be able to do that if they just left it in and change, I don't know, whatever
Yeah.
it helps. I haven't read on that one yet.
Yeah. I put some information about can do the using
Yeah.
optics,
Yeah.
optogenic neural control, and focal epilepsy.
Yeah.
And that comes out of Cleveland. You said it from Cleveland, Martha?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's from Cleveland. This study, are you familiar with this study, Can Do study?
No, because I
I-
haven't spent any time with epilepsy so much, except in writing this, having to
Okay.
describe this all and write it all down. And
No, you don't have to do you don't have to do research, but this is my game.
yes,
So you just like Musk is doing, he's putting implants in. I don't know if they're exploring optogenetic implants. So that essentially uses light to stimulate a
it
certain part of the
uses
brain.
light to fire back
Right.
the electrical surcharge, which would manifest as seizure. That's what it
Help
does.
stop it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
There's a lot of info here.
But you know,
We could look at that later.
30% of people with autism have epilepsy.
Yeah.
So people don't know that. They help
I'm sure there's a
with
lot of links.
autism and research. Why not help more? I'm more into asking them to do more research for epilepsy. And they do so much for autism, include epilepsy with it,
It's
because
going to get
30%
better.
of people have it.
The research is getting better and better and better. Sonati, you have any words to say or anything to comment on?
Um, I have a few questions I wanted to ask because
Sure.
I know for with people who are living with epilepsy, the impact of music varies from person to person. So I wanted to know about what is do you have a special connotations, or do you have to take some consideration while listening to certain type of music, or what? How does it go for a person? Because I know a lot of young people nowadays. I'm talking about from the range of 21 that are their first timers, their first time they are having epilepsy and they don't know how to cope, and they are still looking. They are on their medications. There is a group of like epilepsy addicts epilepsy group here in Mauritius, but it's an NGO. We don't have like that an international platform that speaks to us on a very I would say on a daily basis. So whatever research we do is mostly on the internet or
Right.
from doctors. So if you could provide an insight to young mothers or for youngsters how to
Oh.
cope with that.
Mhm.
I want to say something here because it was a pediatrician who saved me. I was 3 when I started seizing, and it was status epilepticus. It was a bad measles case, etc. So my mother was horrified because she watched me, she was carrying me in status epilepticus. But so she told me that my pediatrician, who just thought I was wonderful, looked at her and said, "Look, your daughter has a medical condition. You could give her a very serious problem. You've got to get out. This one can do anything. You've got to get out of her way."
Yeah.
And so she was a pianist, and she started me within a year and a half. I was like playing the piano and dancing, and that's where my world really took off. And it became pure magic when I started playing the violin. But the key there is finding something beautiful in your life.
Yeah.
Because all kinds of people with epilepsy think they can't go anywhere and they can't be with anyone. But if you go where the people love what you love,
Mhm.
Mhm.
then you have
That's a great message.
That's a very important piece of this, is finding your tribe that has nothing to do with epilepsy, finding the beauty, something
Great.
that you
Yes.
love. Because there are other people who love it too. I mean, that's the thing. And then you spend all of your conscious time creating a life that you want to live.
Yeah.
Because we're conscious a lot of the time. I mean, it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? I mean, we're conscious an incredible amount of the time, and you can put together a life that you want to live.
Uh-huh.
That's the only thing that matters.
It's a great message.
Yeah, because you're gonna seize, it's oh well. And I know in this book I let people know, you're gonna have seizures and you're gonna come back. And people might look at you funny, but they'll move away from you. I used to take city buses and have complex partial seizures on city buses. And yeah, I would come back and everyone had moved away, but I could go to the driver of the bus and say, "Okay, have I passed this street yet?"
Oh.
Okay, well, I'll stay on the bus. Tell
A
me
coping mechanism, huh?
tell me when I get there. So you can use other, and the other, important thing is that people, if you have a grand mal seizure in public, they're going to scare the death out of them. They'll call an ambulance and save your life. I mean, you really don't have to worry about that piece because they get scared enough. They call an ambulance. You're fine. Meanwhile, in between all of that garbage, there's a whole life out there to live. And
There is.
that's the piece that you'll have to take, you know,
Yeah.
is you're very powerful when you're conscious. Consciousness.
I always say to people that I am not epilepsy and epilepsy is not me. It's just that we coexist.
Right. And
Mhm.
the important part is finding the other part, like who are you?
Yeah.
What do you love? What's going to make everything a well-greased, well-oiled machine till it gets nailed by a seizure, and then you can come back to that well-oiled system and do something wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like it has, um, with music, how I play the piano.
Mhm.
So, you think maybe your brain remembering the music and going down to another part of your body, maybe, somehow that can be the link. I don't know, because
It's just that while you're seizing, the brain's not working so well. But when it comes back, if you go straight to where you're in love, it's it's more powerful than anything. And that's how I basically grew up in music therapy just because I used it as my tool to be sane and okay. It was my touchstone to it's going to be okay.
So it worked. It worked.
Yeah.
And I know that person, who wrote Biomedical Foundations of Music as Therapy, Dale Taylor. Because I became sort of that. I did a lot of AMTA work because I did my story, out there.
What's the name of the book? I'll look it up.
Biomedical Foundations of Music as Therapy.
Okay, continue. I'll look it up.
His name is Dale Taylor, and he was in the audience once when I met him. It was because I had put up. I knew it's the Music Therapy Association, so I used slides. I always used the slide of my own brain, but I used I used some diagrams, and he was so excited when he saw an amygdala go up there on the screen because he wants music therapists to have to be trained in the neuroscience of this. And music therapy,
Dale Taylor.
Dale Taylor, yeah. He's a special guy. And so he's someone I like to stay in touch with because he's actually done the work. And in terms of that's the book, which kind of music, one of the things he's both a researcher and a clinician. So he's done a lot of this work and knows that you have to be using the music that this person is going to relate to.
Yeah.
That it's not like everyone needs to hear Mozart. It's people, you need to key in on what makes them go, what makes their bodies work well. And yeah, I mean, there are a bunch of citations in my book out of this book because although it's old now, but I was, it was like I'm writing, but it was, 1990, and this didn't get figured out till 2006. That why I was sort of stuck in this odd period of time where nobody knew much.
It's a good place to start. To read that book and get other sources.
Yeah, and it's there's no baseline of my brain before the seizures start. That's true. But there are other writings now about how trained musicians use a lot more left brain. That it becomes it's not one-sided, that's for sure, and it's not in one particular part of the brain. It's a very global, and that's what had them scared to death. Was they came to my bed and said they were worried about music memory, and I thought that meant ability to play from memory if they took out right temporal lobe, pieces of right temporal lobe. But that's not what it was. Somebody came and said, you have to know we had a closed head injury, musician who never heard music again. It became like cacophony, street noise.
Oh,
Well, that's pretty terrifying if you're a professional violinist and it's the only thing that you really want to do. And yeah, so it was my next concert was with Franco Gulli, who was still alive at that point, playing the Beethoven Violin Concerto. And I thought, what is going to happen to me? If I can't play, that's one thing, but if I can't perceive it, I don't, you know.
Yeah.
And
Perception.
what took over was this thought that maybe if they take it, they'll take the memory that it ever was.
That's, one thing I like to not point out, but observe is that the ignorance of generally the medical profession, and I was part of that, the ignorance about epilepsy. Let me just relate a quick story. I was in Akron, Ohio, working in an emergency room, and I saw my first seizure. I was fixing a bone. I was in orthopedics. I was manipulating, and we gave this gentleman lidocaine. And as you guys know, some people have seizures set off by medication.
Right.
Well, this gentleman had a full-fledged seizure. I had never seen it. I'd read about it, heard about it, and it was in a busy ER. All these doctors come in, right? Nobody knew what to do, including me, right? Of course, we supported the gentleman. He had an IV, and the grizzled old veteran strides in. He's an ER doc. He still is. All he did was lift up his legs and say, "Relax, guys, relax." And we just let the seizure run out. And I was like, "Hey, that's not so scary as far as treatment." And the patient did fine, came out of the seizure, etc. So yeah, there is ignorance in the medical profession too about
Yeah.
the many faces.
Yeah.
It looks like I'm seeing is many faces of seizures.
Yeah,
And
you learn
I've
more
got
talking to other people with
do.
seizures than
Yeah.
you do just your physician, your neurologist. You tell them, you have to tell them, make sure, when you go, you let them know or if someone go with someone that saw you have one too, that explain it to them because they need to know more about
Guy and
everything that
I are
goes
going
on.
to get together. We'll put together a music model, and we'll be able to treat that patient. What do you think, Guy?
Sounds like a plan. Yeah.
It's something to work on, and you know
It
what?
is.
These days, with AI and the computer, anything is possible.
It is.
And you won't believe. I think the medical world, as well as the rest of the world, is going to change in 5 years. Do you know China now has a hospital with no doctors, just AI, 42 AI doctors.
Wow.
No, and you don't get examined. They have tools that examine you. I'll get the link. And you guys can talk about it now. Let me look for this link, but it's important.
And
I think.
according to the ILAE, which is International League Against Epilepsy, according to their findings, do you know where is the best place in the world to be treated for epilepsy?
New York.
Japan.
Japan.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they go through everybody's credentials go through Japan. All the big shot epileptologists.
Really?
Japan is the best place in the world to receive epilepsy treatment and care.
That's interesting.
It is.
And I want, for me, as far as a model, how do they teach? Because as you know, Japanese are generally very well-educated people. So maybe it's something in the education. Okay, let me just show you this hospital in China. It's all AI right here. First hospital
All right.
to be all
First
AI, and I'm sure they have a neurology section completely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's something I wouldn't want to deal with.
I wouldn't want to see something that looks like that though,
Oh,
to talk to him.
yeah.
Needs to look more like a person or I don't know.
Well,
It
Yeah.
just reminds me of that movie with Will
that's
Smith.
which one's that?
The movie,
On the left.
I, Robot or
Oh yeah. Hmm.
yeah,
Robert
that reminds.
Williams. Yeah.
Well, it's going to be interesting what develops. I tell you, the world's going to change as far as doctors, because I was told by a neurosurgeon from China. His name is Ben Zhu. He's one of the biggest in China, and we had lots of webinars together because I do mostly webinars in neurosurgery. He said AI is the future of neurosurgery. I mean, this is a busy neurosurgeon. He does 10 operations a day. He's the top.
Yeah.
He said, I was struck. So AI, I mean, that precise operations and manipulation, but guess what? It's on the way.
Yeah.
They're doing these very fine manipulations in brain surgery, which you guys wouldn't know about, but I know just by the size of the suture they use, 10,
Yeah.
11. When they use that small a suture, they're getting pretty good. And a
Yeah.
robot is exceeding America's the hand.
I mean, I was at a epilepsy conference in Dublin a number of years ago, and they had a neurosurgeon there who was talking then about the ability to carry out neurosurgery remotely.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I know. I thought it wouldn't happen. Never. I thought.
So he
Why
said
is he that?
he could be sitting in his office and operating on somebody on an operating table on the other side of the world.
Yeah, well, I knew it works in heart surgery and other types of surgeries, but I thought, no, it's too precise. Brains, but it's just as precise as cardiac. They're putting valves in
Mhm.
outside the body and they're not cracking the chest.
Yeah.
They're going through a catheter
Yeah.
through the groin or the
Yeah.
arm.
One of the
Yeah, it's amazing. So, okay, we could go on and
Oh,
on. And
Martha wanted to
appreciate-
say something.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
one of the big problems is what you can hit by accident.
Mhm.
Sure, serendipity works big. That's how they discovered penicillin.
Mm.
Yeah, but if you're going in for that last piece of amygdala and it's right next to that bunch of blood vessels, in that third surgery, I wasn't even asked all those questions. Usually you come to from a brain surgery, someone says, "What's your name? Where are you?" Blah, blah, blah. But this time it was just someone held out 2 fingers on each hand and said, "Squeeze my fingers." They were worried in that last because it was so deep that they would hit something and that I'd lose my left hand.
Oh
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah.
They were worried about me with vocabulary.
Oh yeah, because
The area.
left.
I'm
Yeah.
just noticing that there's 11 things on the chat. Are there questions from other people, or is that?
Oh yeah, let's examine it. I haven't really been looking at that guy. Let me.
And two, it's interesting what kind of music would help that person because they're just trying classical. But I make myself feel better to rock alternative music.
Yeah.
Well, that's
So-
Gail Taylor. That's that music therapist. He's got a whole chapter on this because he's used music as therapy for anesthetic.
Mhm. Yeah, I've read about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, that's not a question in the chat. Okay, thank you everyone for coming. Roxanne, thank you for introducing me to these fine people.
Mhm.
Guy and Martha, I'm always open for ideas on collaboration and exploring and deepening the understanding of epilepsy. And this was an excellent webinar, a lot of interaction, which is very good. So I have to do another webinar.
Okay.
So,
See everybody.
all the best. Thank you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.